Greetings from East Texas. Once again, Mike coming at you from AT Astro, Error of Truth, Aspect, and Relationship, or Predictive Astrology. And I'm continuing my moon series with Gemini Moons. I got a lot to say about this moon sign, so get ready because I'm about to bitch. Maybe even vent a little bit. It's not the worst moon sign. Well, there is no such thing as a worst moon sign. I just have a really ambivalent relationship with this particular moon placement. Gemini moons can be cool. I mean, it's a mutable sign and it's air. They love to talk. They're intellectual. They're really chatty. But I've got a long history with this moon sign, and so I'm a little bit jaded. I've known a lot of people with Gemini moons, and I've got some stories for damn sure about how this is usually manifested in their personalities, and it's always the same theme. So get ready. So Gemini moons, one, talk a lot. They talk a shitload. Even if they have the sun sign that's like even in a more chill, like say like a Capricorn or even like a Pisces, they still will talk a lot. They have to talk. Talking is an emotional need. They have to, if they have emotions, which they really don't have emotions, well, they do, but they talk. They talk about it. They have to talk about it. And they talk about their emotions. They talk about it. And you sit there and you have these conversations with them, and they're talking to you about everything under the sun, and they're talking to you about all these feelings. And then as like time goes by and you start to continue to have conversations with them and see how they act, you start to see that they're talking about emotions. They're talking about how they're feeling, but they're not really feeling them. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen. Like they'll talk about how something really upset them or something did, and within 5 minutes it's out the window. I mean, there's very little depth to them emotionally. Like most air moons, they have emotions, but it's like electricity. They're invisible, and their emotions won't really come out until like they're under a lot of stress and pressure, and then once they have to deal with emotions in a visceral manner where you're actually feeling it instead of just fucking talking about it, they like go crazy. They always do. Libra's not that bad. Aquarius, it takes a lot more pressure to get them to finally start, jarring them actual feelings out. Gemini, because Mercury moves so fast and Mercury rules the moon in this circumstance, they lose their fucking mind whenever they have to deal with real emotions. Like, you can tell a Gemini moon's under a lot of stress when they start talking really fast. They start getting really, really manic. I mean, usually they can be pretty chill, but if they start they're speaking really, really fast and they're like profusely apologizing, and they may not actually really even mean it. That means that they're under some sort of internal stress and pressure. They'll start talking just like, it's crazy. It's like the Energizer Bunny, and then you wound it up way, way too tight, and then it's just marching back and forth across this, across your table, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with this Energizer Bunny? That's Gemini Moon when they're under stress. They're great fucking liars. They're awesome liars. I've known this. See, the thing is I've known a lot of them. I've known a shitload of Gemini Moons. In fact, Gemini Moon loves me. So I've gotten to deal with them quite a bit. My ascendant's in Gemini, so like when me and a Gemini Moon get around each other, they look at me and they're like, "Oh, great, you're just like me. You're a superficial piece of shit just like me." And no, I'm not. I look like it, I act like it, but I'm not. And they're really to call them superficial pieces of shit is kind of harsh. Some of them are cool. It just depends on how it's aspected. Like the better ones that I've seen will have like their sun in a water sign, like Cancer, Pisces, or Scorpio. That chills them out a little bit more. It gives a little bit of more emotional depth to the persona. But you see like Gemini Moon and Earth, like one of the worst ones I've ever seen was a Capricorn with a Gemini Moon, or a Libra with a Gemini Moon, or a Taurus with a Gemini Moon. Those are some of the worst. Or double Gemini, bad. In fact, Gemini suns are pretty cool, but the moon it's a whole different matter entirely. Because the emotions, they're supposed to, like, your moon rules the emotions, and if your emotions are overly objective, then that's not really, you can't really, objectivity and emotional feeling are not, they emotions by nature are subjective, and so if you're sitting there constantly trying to take your emotions and think through them, you're not really feeling them or experiencing them. You're just thinking about them and talking about them instead of actually letting it flow through your body and come out in a normal way. They're really quick on their feet. They're clever. They're very clever. They're tricky as fuck. Catching them in a lie is really difficult. And if you do, they'll just figure out another lie to lie their way out of the original lie. They do really well in situations where, like, any sort of emotional depth is not needed in order for you to be successful. Like in the service industry, they do really wonderful. Negotiations, they do really well. They're very sociable. They love to gather information. Gathering information's an emotional need for them. So if you got a lot of like cool little fun facts for them, to discuss with them, they'll love you to fucking death. And they're really good to come and ask about, if you know that they're knowledgeable about something, and you ask them, they're more than likely going to give you their opinion, and they like that. That'll actually make them like you more. And they're really cool if you just want to be friends with someone like that. They're really cool. If you're not the kind of person that likes like emotional depth, then they're cool to be around. They're fun to go party with. They're fun. If you like to party, like I know a lot of Gemini Moons that love stimulants and cigarettes. Most of them smoke cigarettes a lot. The Gemini placements have a thing for cigarettes. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. Or vapes. Cocaine. They tend to love cocaine. They tend to love meth if they do drugs. It's just, anything that focuses their ability to think, because they're all about thinking, then that's going to be something that's right up their alley. It's just, it has a reputation as a cheater placement, especially for the men. It's not as bad for the women. In fact, I like Gemini Moon women quite a bit because they're really fun and social to be around, because women by nature can be a little bit more emotional than men, just depending. Well, the chart has a lot to say about that because I've met some heartless women, but the men tend to just not give a fuck about your feelings. In fact, honestly, the notion of really discussing in-depth, like real emotions to them, it sort of disgusts them because they are so used to objectively tackling any sort of issue that would require intuition or depth of feeling, that it seems alien to them, foreign to them. So they just don't like it. So if you're trying to, be around somebody that you can have like a really deep conversation with about, like your past, and you can have those conversations with them, but if you want it to actually mean something to them, it's just not going to happen really. Unless there's other aspects at play in the chart, because like, people who were born in like the mid 80s, a lot of them can have like hard aspects to Neptune, which can really soften it up a little bit. Or if they're from the Pluto and Virgo generation, sometimes they can have Pluto aspects being made to it to ramp up the emotional intensity a little bit. Or even if they have like Gemini Moon in the 8th house, that's actually not that bad of a placement. But still, the flavor's still there. Now, I've met some awful Gemini Moon people. I've also met some cool ones, but for the most part, my personal experience, because they're drawn to me, they always are. I always got some sort of Gemini Moon I'm dealing with at any given point in time. Some of the worst people I've ever met in my life have been Gemini Moons. Like, let's see. My aunt, I watched her stab her husband in the arm with a fork in one of her crazy mood swings. There was my celly when I was in prison, who was a Gemini Moon, and he would have his crazy, in fact, he was addicted to talking on the phone. He had to be on the phone all the time because communication is an emotional need for them. But he had this weird habit, a horrible habit, of having crazy mood swings and beating the shit out of his girlfriends. And it was like a constant theme throughout his life. He's also kind of a fucking narcissist, but he had other placements in his chart that supported that. Let's see. There's my one buddy, or no, I actually know quite a few Gemini Moon men that are secretly bisexual. That's a common thing I've noticed. I've known Gemini Moon men to have multiple girlfriends at one time, or to be in committed relationships while at the same time having sex with all different kinds. Monogamy is not an easy thing for them. They can do it, but it's just not. It's like having emotional ADHD. Is that a good way to describe it? And I feel like I'm really venting on Gemini Moons because I've seen them do some fucked up things. But my sister's married to one, and he's pretty cool. But he's also you know, he's got Pluto aspects being made to it, and he's also got, like, it's in the 8th house. So he's a little bit more, you know, about actual feeling. So it kind of helps him out a little bit. And also, like I said, they're really fun to party with. They're really fun to gossip with. They will, yeah, they usually, they know what the fuck's going on in their community. They're fun to go to bars with, because, you know, they're usually all over the place. And if you're the kind of person that can keep up with that, like me, then I really usually genuinely enjoy that. But when it starts getting down to actually having like a real, like, deep friendship, or God forbid a relationship, dude, they can be an absolute nightmare unless you absolutely just dig that shit. Unless you dig, you know, somebody who, you know, is just kind of there and will talk to you but won't actually sit and face up to shit with you, then fine, yeah, go get yourself a Gemini Moon. If you want someone that's not going to be boring, if that's important to you in a relationship, go for it. Yeah, have fun with them. But I mean, it's not for me. Maybe I'll meet one day that changes my mind, because I'm also very attracted to Gemini Moon, unfortunately. So I keep getting, you know, I keep having to deal with the nasty side of that bullshit. But maybe one day I'll meet a nice Gemini Moon that'll completely change my perception of how they are. But from my experience, I'm just not a fan. But there's also, like I said, I've said it before in this video, there's good qualities and bad qualities to every sign. And that's just, you know, my particular perspective. So I apologize to any Gemini Moons that may see this and get a little bit offended, but I mean, I call it like I see it, and I've seen a lot of shit. So hopefully this was helpful. I mean, you know, self-awareness goes a long way. So if you see yourself being a superficial, shitty person who, you know, has no real feelings and loves to be two-faced and talk behind everybody's back and then sleep around with people while you're in committed relationships, then yeah, go ahead, you know, just be aware that might be a problem for you, and just try to do something about it if you really give a fuck. But subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be continuing the moon sign series, as also am continuing my astrology classroom series. So I will be screenshotting my computer while I tackle much more complicated concepts in astrology. I also have Outrage Astrology, my podcast with Brittany Robinson. You can find it on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play Music, as well as Spotify. So feel free to subscribe to that, where we make a new episode every week. And I myself offer consultations, so feel free to reach out to me personally through either my Facebook or on my email, which I will post on my YouTube channel. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. Once again, y'all guys have a wonderful day. Peace. Till next time.